Hello and welcome to I'm Your Biggest Fan, the podcast that chats to your favourite artists about their favourite artists. I'm your host Jazmin L'Amy in conjunction with the Noise Podcast Network and sponsored by Satanic Tico. Today I'm chatting with an incredibly talented multi-instrumentalist about another incredibly talented multi-instrumentalist. Over the years, Skyler Accord has been a part of 21 Pilots and Issues, who recently disbanded in January 2024, has had a hand in production for the Home team as well as other projects, and is now releasing music under his own name. From new metal to dark gothic pop, from alt rock to synthwave, Tyler's biggest inspiration and the man that changed his life is the iconic and legendary Stevie Wonder. I'm not sure how much you've been told about this already, but the whole basic premise of this podcast is to kind of just forget about being a musician for a while and revert back to the bands and the musicians that got you into this in the first place. Just revert back to being a fan, because I work in the music industry as well, and I find a lot of the time, especially with social media, a lot of fans seem to forget that their favorite artists just started out like them. So it's an opportunity for you to just reminisce and fanboy the fuck out of the one artist that changed your life. And we've all got one. It might take a little while to figure out who it is, but
I'm way ahead of you. You'll yeah, I'm way ahead of you because Sean told me kind of the spiel before, so I've had days to think about it.
Oh, amazing. Well, let's fucking dive in then. The artist you want to talk about today is Stevie Wonder. And I'm so glad we decided to stick with this one because, one of the reasons I love doing this podcast is usually someone's favorite musician isn't usually the first one you would think of. And that's why I love it, because the music you end up creating tends to sound so different to what changed your life in the first place. So
I agree.
I want to know with you, do you remember the first time you heard Stevie Wonder?
I do. My parents had a vinyl, a actual record from the 70s that was just theirs when they grew up, and it was Songs in the Key of Life. And my brother was working on turntablism a lot when we were kids. So scratching the really technical stuff that people don't really do anymore. And there was one spot in one song where it was an ad lib where he goes, "Hey," and he used to practice that, "Hey, hey, hey," or whatever, for hours and hours and hours. And that kind of got me interested in what is this album? One day we eventually just put it on, just I know you've been scratching this 2-second little spot forever, but let's actually just listen to what this album sounds like.
And what were your first thoughts when you eventually listened to it then?
Honestly, it kind of blew my mind because I thought it was it felt new. It didn't feel I guess, this is also late 90s, early 2000s too, so it was a lot closer to the mid 70s or late 70s or whatever than now. But it felt pretty connected to the new stuff my mom would throw on or something. It just felt the how do I put it? You ever find a band kind of go backwards and listen to a band that a lot of people cite as an influence and then realize all these other bands are that band's fault?
Yeah.
That was kind of Stevie Wonder for me. I was oh, this is why everybody sounds like that.
Yeah. So before you just discovered him and actually listened to that record in full, then how old were you at the time, and what else were you listening to besides that?
Right. So I actually had a couple different phases of being ridiculously obsessed with Stevie Wonder. The first one was he was just kind of part of the landscape, just something that I would throw on or my parents would throw on, and it would be a lot of soul, a lot of neo soul. My parents were really into Maxwell, or my mom was, and Indie RE, and a lot of that kind of more polished neo soul from the early 2000s. And Stevie Wonder was part of that. And then also at the same time, I was getting into new metal and like progressive metal. So it was a lot of like the both
Yeah.
sides of it, which is why I'm actually wearing my Opeth shirt because I
Yeah.
was like when I was asked like who do I want to talk about, I was trying to decide between Stevie Wonder or Opeth, and I was kind of getting into both at the same time, and it just made my brain like it just whatever, it just changed
Yeah.
the chemistry of my brain. But eventually, because I went to school for music, and when I was at school and we were like learning all these jazz songs and stuff, I realized how insane Stevie Wonder's like harmony is and his chord progressions and sense of melody and everything. And at that point, I was able to like kind of dive in deeper and just
Mhm.
really realize like this stuff is crazy. Like I can't
Yeah.
believe like they play it on the radio, you know?
Yeah. I find that as well. Like I find the more I know about a band or an artist personally and like how they write and like what goes into an album, like the more I actually appreciate it. Like instead of
Hmm.
just listening to something as background music, like the more I dive into it and you like take apart the layers and you find out like how it was actually made, the next time you listen to it, it's like listening to an entire new album all over again. And I
Totally.
find it's the same with Stevie Wonder as well, because like that man is ridiculously talented. Like the amount of instruments he can play and basically did it all himself up until like halfway through his career. It
Hmm.
You listen to stuff again after finding all that out, and it just like it mind-boggling.
Right. Especially the drums. Like
Yeah.
listening to songs in the key of life, or because there's a period of, you might know this, maybe not, but there's a period of like 5 albums I want to say that are called like Stevie's classic period, basically just
Mhm.
when he was able to manipulate the label into giving him full creative control.
Yeah.
And he played drums on all of that, and it's like, damn, Stevie, you can play the drums, like what can he do?
Yeah. It's wild. So
Mm,
you also mentioned there that you were kind of getting into Opeth around the same time and like new
mm,
metal and bands like that. Now, obviously, Stevie Wonder is the total opposite side of that spectrum.
right.
So, what was it about him and his music that stood out so much more against the other stuff you were listening to at the time?
Well, I guess it was like a feeling because it was like Stevie Wonder and R&B music in general was there from day one.
Hmm.
And like I'm half black, half white, right? So my mom's black, my dad's white. My mom was always putting this stuff on and kind of like quizzing us, like you guys know who this is? You guys know about the Shy Lights or Sly and the Family Stone or
That would
whatever?
absolutely be me as a parent.
Oh, for sure. And my dad, on the other hand, was putting on like a lot of like, I guess you could call it heavy blues, like it's Jimi Hendrix, Thin Lizzy, Stevie Ray Vaughan, other Stevie, uh, and so like the R&B side kind of felt like nostalgic for, and still does for my whole life, and just feels like it feels like a warm hug, you know.
Mm. Yeah.
And then the metal side at that point was all new because my dad was into like the heaviest thing he was really into was Rage Against the Machine, and then I just realized there was this whole world of extreme music. And I was just looking for the heaviest thing I could find, noisiest thing I could find, and that was all kind of like disorienting, and it was fun to kind of try to get into new styles, but all the while the kind of anchor point that never left was like Stevie Wonder's music and Indie RE and Maxwell and all that kind of like cocoa butter stuff.
Yeah. So I also find that, at least for me, like the first song I discover from a band always ends up being my favorite because,
Mhm.
as you mentioned there as well, it holds that like weight of nostalgia to it, and that feeling never really goes. So for you and Stevie Wonder, like that first song you you heard when your brother was like scratching the ad
Mhm.
lib and like the songs in the key of life, has that album and that song remained your favorite, or have others overtaken it since?
So what's kind of funny is, so my mom is a singer, and she used to sing like locally, just like doing solo artist gigs and like blues and gospel kind of covers and stuff. And on one of her albums, she actually did a Stevie Wonder cover of this song called Heaven is 10 Zillion Light Years Away.
Hmm.
And when I was a kid, I didn't know that. I was just like, oh, this is like one of my mom's songs. And when I was listening to Stevie initially, it was a lot of songs in the key of life and like Hotter Than July, which was the album after it, just because those were the two records that I had.
Yeah.
And then I got a little older, started digging in a little deeper, and then found the original version of Heaven is 10 Zillion Light Years Away, and it blew my fucking mind because I was like, wait a second, like this is like a song I associate with my mom, and now it's on this like Stevie record. So that kind of like crazy full circle moment made that song probably my favorite. It was also just an insane song. It's just a really good song.
Yeah, that's such a wholesome little story as well. Especially like, I can't even imagine what you must have been like when you first had the Stevie version, being like, hang on a minute, I thought my mom wrote this.
Right. Like, did she tell me this? Like,
I love that though. That's such a sweet story. You've
that was a fun surprise.
Yeah, I can imagine. You've also just released your own latest single, It's You That I'm Missing. But between
Hmm.
your previous projects with Issues and 21 Pilots and your current solo material, I imagine you've got an insanely wide range of different sounding EPs, albums, singles. So, how has your love of Stevie Wonder influenced your own music writing in all of your projects? Because especially your new, like the solo stuff,
Hmm.
definitely has that kind of like synthy R&B vibe to it, as well as like the dark gothic side. So,
Right.
how has that kind of like influenced your music writing earlier, and how has that
Hmm.
changed now?
Well, I think, yeah, that's a good question. I think looking back on all of the music that I have made, I specifically, just because I know what parts of the Stevie Wonder's music like resonates with me the most, I can listen to any song I've had a part in and point to, oh, that thing is Stevie, that part's Stevie, that part's this. And the funny thing is, the kind of artist I can do that with is Opeth, especially with Issues, because a lot of the riffs, Um, and looking back on my career and all the stuff I write, I realized that my period listening to a ton of Stevie Wonder and a ton of Opeth at the same time kind of developed into like Issues was inevitable, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because the genre mixing that and like kind of the experimentation and the progressive nature of both of those artist catalogs just kind of infected my brain at the time where I was like the most spongy. So now anytime I write anything, there's plenty of R&B in it, whether I want it to be R&B or not. And it's probably going to be dark sounding because I just like dark shit. So
Hells yeah. Oh, amazing. You've also produced a lot of stuff as well. So,
hmm.
I'm like, I mean, my next question is going to be, has Stevie Wonder influenced you in terms of that? But obviously, a lot of his stuff comes from the 70s, 80s, and 90s, where the production was, less shiny than it is today.
Well,
So,
I
are there
can't, yeah.
any elements where he does come in to influence that for you?
Oh, absolutely. One thing people don't give Stevie enough credit for is being a pioneer in synthesizers.
Hmm.
And my taste for synths, especially, kind of come from that. Like, I more often than not prefer kind of analog, fat 70s sounding synths. Say that 10 times fast. And that's for sure a Stevie thing. And there's a lot of that over the uh, both of the home team records that I worked on, and anything I do for sure. I just like to my right here off screen. I have like a bunch of like hardware synthesizers, which no one has anymore. Like, why would anyone? Plugins are so good, but
Hmm.
for me, it's just like the kind of tactile nature of playing around with it. And then part of how I practice sound design is I just listen to Stevie Wonder stuff and try to remake sounds I hear on those records. And then I have the patches in my keyboard. I'll like pull up a preset, and if someone's here, I'm not gonna take their time. Like, hold on, let me program a cool patch or whatever. I'm gonna pick something I already made, and nine
Yeah.
times out of 10, it's my attempt at recreating a Stevie sound.
I love that. So like basically in anything that you touch, even if it's like a band that has nothing to do with Stevie Wonder, there will be a Stevie Wonder influence in that.
Oh, 100%. And then also just the fact that for some reason, bands I work with keep asking me to write horn parts. The home team is a big example of it. And then we did it a couple times in issues. Just did one for Sharia Moore. And I mean, shoot, Stevie and horns hand in hand.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I would think of. The second you say Stevie Wonder, that's my immediate thought. Horns and synths.
Or whatever that song is, Do I Do? Just insane.
So like he's also like I still can't believe he's still going and he has toured over the years. Have you ever managed to see him live in concert?
I have not. It's one of my like biggest like bucket list things. If he ever does anything ever again, I will go. I have to.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did like some like it had to be 40 years or some anniversary of Songs in the Key of Life where we played like the whole record, and I was on tour. I was so sad.
God damn it, the life of a musician.
Right. That I feel like that happens a lot with artists I really like. Like another odd one is Rammstein. I just fucking love Rammstein, and they were playing LA the day after, I think it was the day after 21 Pilots finished up in their tour in Seattle. So I had no way to make it. And what made it worse is because all my friends know I just fucking love Rammstein. I got texted from probably 2 or 3 separate sources of, bro, I have an extra ticket. I know you love this band. You want to come? It's like, God damn it. Shout out them though.
That must have been infuriating.
Yeah, it was heartwarming and frustrating at the same time.
Yeah, I feel bad now if I say that. Like I've only seen them once, but it was
Enough, right?
wild. Oh, that's such
sick.
a shame. So it was like, has Stevie only really toured like just that once, or have you had other opportunities to see him where it's not worked out?
There's been other opportunities, but I've just never had cash. Like, I feel like most of I mean, this is the real tragedy of just I guess, economics of music. Is when you discover somebody, it's probably because they're still active and you're probably a kid and you don't have any money to yourself, you don't have a job. So I would say most artists that I really care about, I've never seen live. I did get to see Mudvayne, and I got to see Opeth in like 2018, maybe for the first time. But when artists are putting out music that I care about, and I'm like, oh, I really like this new album. I've never seen like the album tour of any artist that I've cared about, because it's always like I'm on tour. That's why I'm listening to music, because I have tons of time on my hands, and so are they, and we're not syncing up. It just is what it is. I mean, Stevie though, like if there's any, I will move heaven and earth to see that.
Yeah, I bet. I was also when I was doing my research, I saw that like there was a 10-year gap between an album in 1995 and 2005. He's not released anything new since. Like, are you aware, is he still writing music? Do you think he's going to release something again at some point?
Honestly, I don't. I know he's still making music because every once in a while he'll put something out like that no one will care about, and it honestly won't be like that good. But that's fine. I don't. Yeah, I don't see a record in his feet. God, the amount of music he's put out, I'm sure he's just, he's done releasing it. I know he's not done making it though, because, or at least experimenting and having fun. Because a buddy of mine actually worked some benefit that Stevie was doing, and they all broke for lunch. And Steve was like, "All right, I'll see you in a bit." And he just sat at the piano for like the hour lunch break, just noodling and like exploring, like like any badass musician
Yeah.
30 years younger would still be doing. So he's still the man.
Yeah. I think I'm not sure if this was like all his stuff or also collaborations, but I've got here that he's got 26 albums.
Yeah, and you know what? I've heard every single one, every song, at least once,
At
as a
least
point
once.
as a point of I don't know. I play video games that way too. Like if I play RPGs, I have to check
Mm.
every closet for every.
Yeah. Yeah, I do the same. Like, it's one of the reasons why I love doing this podcast because, like, now that I work in music, I find it really hard to get into new stuff that isn't
Mhm.
what I'm currently working on and like my comfort bands from my childhood. So
Mhm.
I love doing this because it like I get to kill two birds with one stone. Like, I get to research the band we're talking about and I get to research like the band I'm talking to.
Oh yeah.
And it just because I've got like a purpose for it really because I find like if I'm not working and listening to the bands that I'm currently working, I'll just sit in silence.
Right. You need that. Yeah, as much as you can get kind of like
Yeah.
silence. I feel
Um
you.
and like when I was a kid as well and getting into music, I would do the same. Like if I was getting into a band, I would rinse every single album. I would read all the autobiographies, all the Wikipedia pages. I just don't have the time for that anymore, and that makes me sad.
Yeah, I remember when I was in high school, the kind of way to discover metal, because most of the good stuff was like European, and the stuff that wasn't like um, scene hair and white belts and breakdowns and stuff, which that was easy to find. Um, like the stuff I like really was looking for, like I didn't have any friends really into it. I had like one or two. It's like you go to school the first day, you see the guy dressed in all black, you're like, you're my
Yeah.
friend. So I had like a couple of those friends, but it took a lot of legwork to surf through like Blogspot or what you get really good at like the weird search engines like Hotbot to get different like nobody remembers Hotbot, I'm sure. Ask Jeeves, whatever, because they would
I
give you
remember
different
that.
stuff. Yeah. But yeah, I just don't have the time anymore. Most of it is all on platforms that I'm not as familiar with. Like I never really got into SoundCloud or Bandcamp because
Mm.
by that time I was already like touring. So I'm not sure. And so, but actually, what that's done is make me very much cherish when someone gives me a music recommendation.
Yeah, absolutely. I work with my colleague Dave. He's just like my source for new music half the time. Like if
Mm-hmm.
I'm in the office and he's in the office, I'm like, right, tell me what we're gonna listen to today. And
Mm-hmm.
it's great when that happens. But like it didn't take me until 2020 to finally get Spotify because
Oh wow.
I am such like a physical albums gal.
Oh, that's so not American of you. I love that.
Very, is that a British thing apparently?
It's I definitely feel like the UK is more into physicals and Japan is more into physicals,
Mm.
and outside of that, everybody streams
Yeah, that's true.
or steals.
Or both.
Yeah, or both.
But yeah, it didn't take me until like that long to finally like crack and be like, oh, I should probably get Spotify because it's unfortunately it is just an easier way to discover new music.
Hmm. Well, the hack is doing both. Like
Yeah.
Spotify makes things kind of disposable. So like if you like still do the record digging or go buy a CD just looks cool, or like from an artist but you never heard the record or whatever, it just kind of forces you to have a more patient relationship with it, I
Mm.
think. Like front to back, you're not putting it on shuffle.
Yeah.
And it's like, the one out of five CDs in your car, you're gonna listen to it.
Exactly. But I love that. And I love taking out like the album sleeve as well and reading through the lyrics or listening to the records. And album
Totally.
artwork too. Oh my God. Love album
Yeah.
artwork.
Yeah, one thing I feel like people don't do that I do that I love doing is anytime I see record that has like a really sick cover on like Spotify or something, I have a playlist for all the cool album art.
That's cool. I like that.
And it helps too. Whenever I have to put out music and come up with the art, I can like scroll through and look for inspiration and stuff.
Oh, I love that. I've got some like artwork tattooed on me as well.
Oh, dope. Oh, is that I see Iron Maiden, right?
Yeah. It's a weird angle.
That's cool.
And Guns N' Roses.
Oh, yep, yep.
Eh, there you
Sick.
go. So you mentioned there that you have listened to every single Stevie Wonder album.
Yes.
So out of his 26 album discography, which ones are in your top three?
All right, top three.
I would usually ask people to rank them in order, but I think 26 is a bit
That's a lot,
excessive.
yeah. Okay, so I would say probably three is hold on. I need to look at a list of it. There's so many. Because there's five that are like the ones, right? Okay, classic period, Stevie. One thing I will say that's kind of a hot take maybe is like it's not a hot take necessarily. It's just like I don't care as much about Songs of the Key of Life as everybody else does. It is an
Okay.
amazing album and it's like the 10 out of 10. You know, every fucking Rolling Stones best albums of all time, it's like top 5 every time, right?
Yeah.
Maybe I've just heard it a lot, but I would probably say number 3. Okay, I have to think of 3 later, but I'll tell you number 1 for me is probably fulfilling this first finale.
Okay.
That's the one with Heaven is 10 zillion light years away on it. And honestly, that's just because I like that album. I don't know that it's necessarily the best, but I love that album.
It's fine. It's all about your opinion.
Right. And then 2, I'd probably say Music of My Mind, which is also just the thing where it just hit me at the right time. I just love that record. And the last song on it, the song called Evil, is just like, it's so crazy. It just keep changing keys into the stratosphere just forever and ever and ever. And probably 3rd is someone's gonna come for me for this, but it's probably Intervisions, which is another one that has like a bunch of the hits on it. I love that
Okay.
one.
So I've got the list here in front of me. So you've gone
hmm
for Fulfilling This First Finale, 1974.
hmm
Then you've gone backwards to Music of My Mind, 1972. And then
hmm
forwards again for Inner Visions in 1973. I like that
That's
they're
right.
all like 3 years apart as well.
Yeah, he was putting out an album every year for like 6 years, 5 or 6 years straight or something, and every single record won best record at the Grammys. And I remember watching some clip, I guess Simon and Garfunkel or something, or
Mm.
maybe just Paul Simon put out a solo record right before he put out the year before he put out Songs in the Key of Life. And the first person he thanked was Stevie Wonder for not putting out a record that year.
I feel like Taylor Swift is the new Stevie Wonder because everyone says that about her now. Every time she releases an album, she just ruins everyone else's chances.
Right. Well, yeah, the thing about Taylor Swift, okay, I hope someone doesn't get mad at me. But she is to me what I don't know if you saw that clip of Yasin Bey, because he changed his name, my bad. Talking about Drake, and he was saying that Drake has more to do with just like shopping malls and commerce in general than like hip hop or whatever. I feel very much that way about Taylor Swift. Like she's a way bigger brand than
Yeah.
sick songwriter. Like she is a sick songwriter, but is she like a good enough songwriter for like this whole thing? Like I don't know about it. Like
Yeah.
I feel like she's got kind of more to do with more in common with like a Madonna, who's like an insanely successful and really curated, like very I guess talented at curating a brand.
Yeah.
Like she's an amazing pop star. Than like I don't know, like a Bruce Springsteen or something, or a I don't know, or even like an Alicia Keys. Actually, is an interesting example. Someone who has like a ton of hits, sure, but her like kind of quality or staying power is like really in her cult and like the artistry itself, like her decisions, I
Yeah.
guess. But yeah, not to knock Taylor Swift's music because I actually think her music is this is gonna sound crazy, but I think it's her music is underrated from non-Swifties.
Yeah, no, I agree. I had some friends over a couple of months ago, and like my main friendship group, I'm the only metalhead. Like no one else is into music anywhere near like I am. We went to see Girls Aloud in concert, and then we came back home and watched the Taylor Swift Eras tour on Netflix. And I was
Hmm.
like way out of my depth. I was just watching it because my mates wanted to watch it. But like coming from the point of view, like I wouldn't choose to listen to her, but I can absolutely appreciate what she has like created around herself.
Hmm.
Like it is insane to see how successful she has become. But I completely agree with you as well. Like the songwriting is great, but everything else around her kind of like overshadows it.
Totally, totally. And that's just speaks to her talent as a pop star. I feel like you can't judge a pop star based on their music alone or at all
Yeah.
sometimes.
It's been exactly why I like doing like this podcast as well. Because like as a musician, it's unfortunately it's not just about the music anymore. Like
Hmm.
you have to be a content creator, you have to be a graphic designer, you have to be your own booker, your own this, your own that. Like it's
Right.
everything now.
Yeah, you're DIY whether you want to be or not.
Exactly. But going back to the last question about his discography, you mentioned your top three
Mhm.
there. You also mentioned that a lot of his later stuff you're not entirely keen on. Do you
Mhm.
have any specific ones you find underwhelming and why you think they're underwhelming?
That's a good question. Well, the problem with later Stevie stuff isn't the songwriting or the songs in general. It's the like really, really dated production that doesn't like totally hold up.
Right, okay.
Like he has a couple songs that or a couple like records that are kind of like in the New Jack kind of world. So like do you know what New Jack Swing is?
No.
You'd know it if you heard it. Like Finesse by Bruno Mars.
Okay, yeah.
So like everything's swung like taka 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 taka, and it's like really like I don't know like it basically all the whole radio sounded like that for a
Hmm.
time. It was all uh, like Janet Jackson's fault, Mint Condition's fault, Guy's fault, Bobby Brown, that whole thing. And Stevie did a record that was New Jack, and it was so cool, but it sounds so thin and kind of
Right.
weird.
Yeah.
It's like pop records from like 1993. Just none of them sound very good.
It's absolutely insane like how much of a difference a production can make. Because like
Hmm.
it's why I love going to see bands live as well. Because like they might not do a lot for me on record, but I
Hmm.
if I go and see them live and like the bass and the guitars just like hits me so much harder, sounds so much fuller,
Hmm.
completely different experience.
Yeah, it's a total sensory like thing.
Yeah, and I need that in my headphones.
Right. Yeah, and I feel like with Stevie specifically, his songwriting never really wavered. You know what? You know what? Here's a record I want to talk about. So he did, and this is actually a great example of this. He did a record right after Songs in the Key of Life, before Hotter Than July, that no one talks about, but it's like if you know, you know. And it was a
Stevie
sound.
Wonder's Journey Through the Secret Life of Plants.
That's the one. That's the one. And it's weird as hell. It's like a soundtrack to a documentary about how
Mhm.
there's evidence for plants being sentient and having like emotions and stuff. Um, Crazy in general. And some of his best work is on that record, like some of the songs that he wrote, but then most of the tracks are weird, hard to listen to unless like you're really passionate about it, kind of soundscapey, you know?
Hmm.
And then he follows that up with Hotter Than July, which is, I feel like, an objectively worse record than Songs in the Key of Life, which is still a good record, but it just sounds so 80s. And I think that transition period, that was just like, like I don't know. People call it the commercial period for a reason, I guess. It's like
Yeah.
him just making pop music. Like, I just called to say I love you. It's like cool song, but I don't know. I'm not putting it on.
Yeah, yeah, of course.
I'm your biggest fan!
So when I was doing my research, I also hadn't realized like just how young Stevie Wonder was when he like first signed to Motown.
Right.
And despite his later success and accolades, like it took so long for him to achieve like consistent success, at least in a record label's eyes. And I feel
Hmm.
like if someone like that now, record labels they just wouldn't bat an eyelid. They would drop you immediately if your first single wasn't the biggest hit to ever happen.
Yeah. 100%.
So, how do you think Stevie Wonder's success would have played out had he been discovered at a later age rather than as a child star?
Oh, I think it would have been way different. Because part of the reason his classic period was so good was just because by that point he was just like arrogant as fuck, basically. Like he was part of the Motown songwriting teams his whole childhood, and they were basically like, yeah, you're better as a part of like the machine as
Mm,
than an artist or whatever. They didn't really know what to do with him because it was little Stevie versus Stevie Wonder. Same kind of problem with Michael Jackson. They had little Michael from the Jackson 5, and then they're like Michael Jackson like an adult, like
yeah.
everybody knows you're a kid. Um but yeah, like a big part of his music is rebellion, and rebellion from the label and people who kind of think he's like a gimmick or whatever, or thought he was a gimmick. And the early records also, what was the first one I said? Full Music in My Mind, I think. It was the first one of that period where he had control. And a big part of that record is just being pissed off about like President Nixon, basically.
Yeah.
He's like talking shit. Uh-oh, are we frozen? Are we
I'm cool. Are you cool?
frozen? Are we catching up? Or we're good? Yeah, we're good. We're good. Um, but yeah, he was just talking shit to Nixon that whole record, and I feel like you only get to that point if you've already written a lot of music and like you've gotten all the like love songs out of the way,
Yeah.
to now you can write like specific shit, you know. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like it just would have been way different. I don't think something like that is inevitable. Like a kid like that becoming the talent that he is. I think something, it takes a village. It's like Prince, like he grew up with instruments. Like if he grew up in I don't know, Laos or something in like the 70s, and there wasn't as anywhere near as much of a music industry as there, in Minneapolis or Detroit or wherever he came up, um, we wouldn't have had Prince. Doesn't matter how talented you would be.
Yeah. It's interesting there. So it's kind of like being a product of your environment, really. But then again, you do get those situations and circumstances of like people fighting to be
Hmm.
in the right spaces. Now, obviously, Stevie Wonder is famous for being one of the most talented and groundbreaking musicians in the last century, despite being blind since birth. And obviously,
Hmm.
his legacy hasn't been an easy feat for him to get there. Um, so in terms of his like tenacity and determination to overcome something like that, has that had an influence on you as well in your personal life, not just like the music side of stuff?
Yeah, totally. I feel like honestly for me it's less about him being blind and more about him being like underrated and rebelling against that. Cause when I want to say Songs in the Key of Life, he was 27 when he dropped that, which is insane. Um, and for me, it's just like the conviction that he had and the focus on like artistic focus. Um, and I guess okay, so the artistic focus he had to create something like that, and the conviction he had to make it happen for himself because he had complete control over it.
Yeah.
That's incredibly inspiring to me because it's just like it's not going to happen unless you make it happen. It's not like Berry Gordy was behind the scenes going like, you know what would rip a two album opus about like life, love, and the planet Saturn and race relations in America and President Nixon, like, and your daughter, like, you know, there's no suit that's that smart. That's why the whole industry plant argument thing that people say is complete bullshit because, I mean, no offense to suits, but most suits are fucking dumbasses when it comes to like just like trying to figure out what's gonna pop. You know, everybody's throwing shit at the wall and hoping it works. And I don't think you know any good suit is gonna admit that.
It's like
so yeah,
it's insane as well though. Like he didn't get like his biggest successful breaks until after he jumped out of the machine and like after he was just like doing it his own way. And stories like that have been proven time and time again over centuries. So it's insane that, you know, like the suits in the industry is still plugging that you have to follow like certain guidelines if you want to be successful. There's like an exact recipe you need to do if you want to make it. But like the most successful artists have never done that.
Right. I remember watching some documentary on Real World, like the reality TV show, and all the stuff that they learned when they were first doing the show. And there was something they said that really resonated with me, which is produce situations, not people. And with them, basically how that manifested is don't manipulate people into doing this or doing that or whatever. Just create situations that allow interesting dramas to happen or interactions to happen, right? And I feel like the best A&Rs and the best kind of like behind the scenes people do that instead of going like, oh, you should write a song like this or you should write a song like that or this is hot right now. Why don't you make this faster or whatever. I feel like the guys who are the best or the suits that are the best really just curate an environment where the artist can thrive. So it's like they'll introduce them to people. They'll like put them on writing trips. They'll encourage them to write with different people who in different styles just so they can learn something. So it's almost like they're trying. Well, I guess, yeah, that's developing an artist, which no one does anymore.
Yeah, it's kind of like nurturing what's already there rather than trying to change it.
Exactly.
So Stevie Wonder's also collaborated with a lot of other artists when he's not doing like his own stuff. Which of his collaborations are your favorites and who would you like to see him collaborate with?
That's a good question.
Besides yourself.
Right. Yeah, I would kill to do that. Well, there is one that I don't know if it counts as a collaboration, but I'll mention it. It's on Songs of the Key of Life, and it's called Come Back as a Flower, and it's with his ex-wife, Sarita Wright, if I remember right. And that song is just great. It's just really nice. But I want to say, oh, you know what? It's more of it's more sick in spirit than like it's because it's not like my favorite song, but he wrote a Whitney Houston song once.
Yeah, I think I read that somewhere, but I can't remember which one it was.
Yeah, it wasn't a hit or anything, and the song was like fine. It just is kind of crazy hearing Whitney Houston sing something that sounds like Stevie Wonder wrote it.
Yeah.
That or Can't Help It. Actually, that's my final answer. Can't Help It by Michael Jackson. It's on Off the Wall, I think. Do you know that song?
If you played it to me, I'd probably recognize it, but not.
It's kind of it's kind of a deep cut. The only reason you know it is kind of if you were a Stevie Wonder super fan.
Well, that's exactly why we're having this conversation. And one of my other questions was actually going to be following on from that. Like, obviously, you know, the mainstream hits from Superstition to Isn't She Lovely to Higher Grounds. But which hidden gems and underrated bangers would you suggest other people go and listen to?
That's the weight of that question. There's so many good ones.
I know.
Okay, it's going to be kind of a song that some people there's a term called black famous, which is something that like every black person in America probably knows,
Yeah.
but if you're not black, you probably don't know it. There's a song that's definitely black famous called "Golden Lady" that I
Hmm.
really like. Sometimes I'll play it on like late night R&B stations, but that one's awesome. But a deeper cut, because now I'm just for the challenge. Let me think. Um,
I mean, you've got 26 albums to choose from. I'm sorry for putting you in this position.
right. Um, it was still kind of popular, but it's fine. Do I do?
Hmm.
Most people don't know the song "Do I Do," but they'll know the hook because Ja Rule sampled it.
Yeah.
Do I do? Everybody will be living it up and say what I do, whatever that song is. But the original one is a banger. It's like kind of insane.
Which record is that one from?
It was a God. This is just going to show how nerdy I am. But it was a bonus track on a best of compilation that he did in the late '80s.
So it was written for the
Right.
Greatest Hits album.
Exactly. I think Musicarium or something like that.
Is that a dog I just heard in the background?
It is. You want to meet him?
I would love to.
Pee-wee, come here.
Oh my God, what's his name? Pee-wee.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Come here,
I love
buddy.
it.
Come on. All right. So he's blind, hence the
Oh,
ghosty eyes. But this
oh,
is Pee-wee. Yeah,
he's so
he's
cute.
he would be looking at you, but he can't see you. So
Which is quite ironic considering we're talking about Stevie Wonder.
right. You know what's funny about Stevie too is all right. You're going down.
Oh,
Can't hold his liquor. Um, but if you next time you listen to if you pick one of these records to listen to, take a shot every time he mentions his eyes. He can't stop talking about them.
oh man. I'm not going to be able to unhear that now every time I listen to Stevie Wonder.
Right. I guess it makes sense. Like people probably talk to him about being blind all the time. Like, so
Mm.
what's it like being blind?
Oh God. Could you imagine like being in your mid 70s, having been blind your whole life and still getting asked that question?
Yeah. Yeah, he probably talks his shit. If you ask him that question, he's probably got like 10 like, drop down answer of crazy responses.
Yeah, just to make you feel really bad for bringing it up.
Right.
So, if those are the hidden gems you would suggest people go and listen to, if you were directing someone listening to Stevie Wonder for the first time,
Hmm.
which three tracks would you choose that encapsulates him perfectly?
Assuming they don't know any of them, I would say Superstition because that's a banger. I would say Isn't She Lovely because it's timeless. And I would probably say probably a funky one. Um,
Love a bit of
too
funk.
yeah, Too High. I'd probably say Too High.
Nice.
Too
I
High is a
have.
really strange song, but it's awesome.
Why is it strange?
It's like I think it's just about like drugs or something, or like someone who it's kind of from a narrator's perspective about someone who does too many drugs, and it's
Right.
really kind of psychedelic and has this crazy chromatic like
Like you're on a funky trip.
yeah, exactly.
I love that. I love it when like music sounds like what the lyrics talk about.
I love that too.
I love that. It's a vibe.
Hmm.
So one of my last questions for you is, are you a fan of BAM merch?
Oh yeah,
Do
probably too
you
much.
own any Stevie Wonder related merch?
I don't because it's all bad. Like he's not exactly doing numbers in the merch department, but I would. I have a Stevie Wonder tattoo if
Oh,
that
you do?
counts.
Yeah, of course it
Uh-huh.
does. What is it?
It's like right here. And it's just lyrics. It's but who am I to doubt or question the inevitable being, which is the craziest line from songs of the Secret Life of Plants.
I love that. I like when I listen to music, like lyrics and vocals are like the first thing I pick up on.
Hmm.
And I've got a few lyrics tattooed as well. Um, And like usually one of the questions I ask is if you could get lyrics tattooed on you, what would you get? But I don't know why I didn't
Now
put
you
that.
know.
Now I know, yeah. Have you ever thought of getting any other lyrics tattooed on you?
Um, no, not in the year of our Lord 2024. Post me too. I'm good
Yeah,
on that.
yeah. I thought about like I've got a few band related tattoos
Mm,
and I was just like I'm wait a few more years before I get another one just to make sure they don't get cancelled.
right. Yeah, I feel like I'd get album art,
Mm,
because you have art, right? Like I'd get
yeah.
that before I'd get lyrics because like the iconography is usually a little more directly associated with the art than like the behavior of the artist.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I like as well that like for artwork, unless you already know the band, you don't know it's a band related tattoo,
Right.
which works well.
Yeah. No one's gonna come up and talk shit like you didn't see that tweet then, did you?
Yeah. That'll be the day. It'll happen. I'm sure it will happen. Guns N'
Yeah.
Roses probably for me.
Yeah, I'm sure. No, I'm sure they're great people.
There was so much sarcasm in that then. Okay, so you've got Stevie Wonder lyrics tattooed on you. We know he's not hot in the merch game department. So if you could create your own piece of Stevie Wonder merch, what would you like to own?
I want an Afro pick.
An Afro pick.
You know what an Afro pick is?
Explain it to me.
It's like a forked comb. It like looks like
Ah,
that or whatever, and
yeah.
like.
Right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Now that you've explained it, I didn't know it was called. I learn something new every day.
hmm
That was
I think
cool.
that would be fun.
What would you have on it? What would the design be?
Well, I'm not. Maybe I don't know. I actually have no idea.
That is such a unique piece of merch though. Like this is what I love about band merch is like anyone can make a t-shirt,
Mhm.
but making like a specific multi-purpose item always the best.
I should make an Afro pick.
There we go. Just think about what you would want your favorite artist to make and then just make it yourself.
I probably have to sell out of my shirts first because I owe them some money. So if you're listening to this, buy my shirts and I'll do an Afro pick.
Thank you for listening to I'm Your Biggest Fan. If you enjoyed what you heard, please don't forget to like, share, subscribe, comment, send it to your nan in the post. Every little helps. You can follow us everywhere at biggestfan_pod. Follow me everywhere at Wrathchild_jazz. Noise at Noise UK on everything. Noise Podcast Network at Noise Podcast Network on everything. And Satanic Tico at Satanic Tico and at Pitch Black North. If you have a band member in mind that you think would be perfect for this podcast, perfect for this topic of conversation, or maybe you are the band member and you're the super fan, drop us a comment, drop us an email. All other info can be found below in the description. And thanks again for listening. We'll catch you soon.